I want to talk about what parenting is like with a chronic illness. But honestly, a lot of what I'm going to say applies to parenting in general. So even those of you without a chronic illness, you can listen and you might gain from it. I was absolutely terrified to have kids because of my lack of physical energy, like severe lack of physical energy. Um, and I was really, really scared. Um, so I've put a lot of thought and effort into learning and understanding what it means to be a healthy mother, um, what it means to give kids what they actually need. And something I've come to learn is that it's really more about the being emotionally healthy than about the physical energy we give to our kids. Really, what kids need is unconditional love and emotional safety. That's really, really what they need. Obviously, they have physical needs, and those physical needs need to be taken care of. But honestly, we can get away with much more than we think we can. Like, they don't need fancy meals, they really do not. They need clean clothes, they need baths, and they need meals. But the meals could be simple. More than that, if they have their emotional needs taken care of, they really are self-sufficient. They can play themselves. Like, there isn't that much that they really, really need. Um, I've taught my kids to be quite independent. Like, I try to encourage independence, actually. I try to, from a young age, they can take drinks by themselves. They can even take food by themselves, depending what it is, obviously. Um, and sometimes they'll spill, and I try to be easy about it so that they, to encourage that independence. And that really helps me a lot. But I want to talk more about the emotional aspect because that is really the most important. So obviously unconditional love, which basically means that I love you no matter what. Nothing could ever change how much I love you. And I literally tell that to my kids all the time. I tell them, I ask them, like, why do I love you? And I say, just because. Nothing could ever change how much I love you. And I show it to them. Like, sometimes they'll make a mistake and I'll tell them, I still love you. That's one of my main focuses. Um, when I was in the hospital for 4 weeks in like October, November, um, my kids obviously were lacking. My husband stepped in as much as he was able to, but at the end of the day, they were lacking their mother. And I did feel guilt, not from a place of like I felt like I could have done anything different, but like I felt bad for my kids that they really were lacking. One of my kids especially was pretty avoidant, like they don't want to like come to me and whatever. And I actually want to give credit to Sabrina for saying this to me. Um, at my first session back with her after my hospitalization, she said to me that, one day your kids are going to grow up and they're going to understand. And they will. And that's something actually that I also focus on is my relationship with them. I really, really focus on building a relationship where my kids could come to me and talk to me about anything. They can talk about their feelings. They can even come tell me that I want you to say I'm sorry. And I will. Obviously, with normal, it has to be something that I need to take responsibility for, meaning sometimes my child did something that deserves a natural consequence and they'll want me to say I'm sorry, and I'll be like, at the end of the day, you did that, and that was the consequence. Um, but I very much try to build a healthy relationship where not just for now, because I mean, obviously it's important now as kids, they're developing their emotional world, and it's very important for them to have that emotionally stable, healthy parent. But even when they're adults, my goal is that they're going to look back and, maybe one of my kids is going to look back and be like, they really carry trauma from the time I was in the hospital for 4 weeks. Or maybe one time I didn't have energy, or every time I didn't have energy, I behaved a certain way that really bothered them. Now, I try very much to pay attention to my behaviors to try to heal and be better for them. But, every child really absorbs things differently. And maybe one day they're going to, maybe they're going to carry trauma into their adult life. And my goal is that for them to be able to feel comfortable to come and tell me that, what they're carrying. And they should feel that I'm going to take accountability and I'm going to do my absolute best to help them heal. And that relationship starts from when they're babies. That starts with when they come to me, and they're I could tell that they're scared to come to me, or if they did something wrong or they made a mistake, I approach it very carefully so they shouldn't feel fear from me, because if they feel fear, then their nervous system is going to sense that it's not safe to come talk to me. I also look out for like little signs in my kids. I try to catch these things as soon as possible, like signs that they're lacking. Like I'll notice that a kid is throwing tantrums a lot. That usually is a sign that they're lacking something. Or if like one kid will fight with the other kid, that usually means that they're lacking something. Um, there's a bunch of different signs that I try to look at for. I could tell that one of my kids is stressed. They're just not acting themselves fully. Then I try to give that kid what they need. I try to give them some extra love. It's honestly the hardest part of this is juggling it, because if one kid is getting extra love because they need it, the other kids will then want it too. So it's a very delicate balance of trying to find the right way to do it. It's work. I'm always working on this and trying to get better and better. I also look out for positive things, like just a cute story. This honestly like just warmed my heart so much. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. One night my twins were in the bath and my daughter was waiting for me to do something for her. And I told her I'll be with her in a minute and I just have to go check on the twins. And she's like, no, 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 mommy, I'm gonna go check on them. This way you have energy to record a video tonight. And that just meant so much to me. Now I just want to point out that sometimes kids can feel responsible for the parent and do that at a place of like they're trying to please the parent. So I'm very careful. I sometimes do see that my kids do that, and I very much try to make sure that my kids don't ever feel responsible for my needs. They don't ever feel like they have to please me to get love. But in this case, it very much came from her heart. Like I could tell that she was so full of love that she wanted to give something back to me. And there was another story also last week. One day she came and asked me what I want. And I'm very not materialistic. Like my mind is very much focused on my emotional world, my growth world, and not so much on materialistic stuff. So like I was caught off guard and I was just like, I don't know, flowers. And that was that. What she did was she went to my husband and she said that she wants to get mommy flowers. And they went to the store together. They bought flowers and they bought a card, and she wrote a little card for me. She can't really write yet, but she wrote it in her own little way. And she came and gave it to me. And looking out for these things really helps me realize that, despite all my lack of physical energy and how much effort and time and energy I have to put into taking care of myself, my kids feel loved. They do feel loved. And it really is possible to raise healthy kids without all that physical energy. I also try to include my kids with, my medical stuff. Like in the hospital, I wrote about this back then, how one of my kids, my younger daughter, she was very curious about what was going on. So she came into my bed and I saw that and suddenly she started complaining that her finger hurts. So I allowed her to call the nurse and I had the nurse take care of her. And, I very much try to get them to feel comfortable. I encourage them to say hi to the doctors and the nurses. My home infusion nurse that comes, they love her and I allow them to develop a relationship with her. I allow them to touch my things if they want to. They're allowed to ask questions. Whatever questions, I always answer the questions on their level, obviously, but like I answer their questions. So this way they don't feel like any of this is scary. To them, honestly, it's just normal. It really is just normal. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is kids need to feel like their mother is an emotionally safe person that they can rely on. They just need to feel safe. And that's the work that we need to do as mothers.